Let's say we want to crack passwords of a Linux box. For example, we have a Linux desktop here running. In Linux, passwords are stored in the file /etc. So in the directory etc, you'll see many system configuration files. You'll see lots and lots of files, and there's a file called password here, which stores the basic user credentials. So you'll see different usernames, along with their user ID, group ID, home directory, so where their personal files are stored, for example, home Alice or home Bob. But it doesn't contain the passwords. It shows an X for the location where the password should be. The passwords are stored in a secured format called a hashed format in the file etc shadow. So you'll see another file here, etc shadow. That file contains the actual words in a special form called a hash. So I can show you the output in the terminal. That is the etc password file that you just saw. And this is the etc shadow file. So you'll see the same users. And for those users, for example Alice here and Bob, the passwords are there in a special format called the hash. So the hash obviously is not the password itself, but a special output created by a hashing algorithm. So you'll see here also user Bob has a password and user Billy, but those are not passwords we can actually type. So we need to crack those hashes. So in order to crack those hashes, we'll copy these two files, so the /etc passwords and the etc shadow passwords, onto our Kali Linux computer in order to crack them. So I copied these two files, password and shadow. So if I click on shadow, you'll see this is the original shadow file from the victims or the targets computer. So the shadow file and the password file. The next thing you'll want to do is to combine those. So you don't want two separate files, you want to combine those. And for that, there's a tool on Kali Linux called unshadow. So let me just make this a bit smaller. So we'll type unshadow, password and shadow to our new file, or whatever you want to call it. So that creates a combined file with all of the information, so the users and their hashed passwords. So that's one of the things you want to do. Next we can use a tool called John. So John the Ripper is included by default on Kali Linux, and John the Ripper is a hash cracking tool. You'll see it works with a password file. So obviously the next step is to have a password file. Now on Kali Linux by default there's a password file included in user share word lists. You'll see rocku.txt gz here. So I'm going to copy that into our home directory and right click extract. So now we'll have a list of passwords here, rocku.txt. I can show you the first few lines of that file. So that file is actually contains actually 14 million passwords, so it's an enormous list, and that's also why it's 133 megabytes, and it contains nothing but passwords. So if I would show you the first 100, you'll see any commonly used passwords, and this file is huge. So you'll see it contains 14 million passwords in that file. It's just one of the password lists you can use with John. Obviously there are larger lists. 14 million is just like quite a large set to try out. So next we'll try to crack that file, the .txt file we combined using unshadow. So remember this command, and we'll use John to try to crack it. You'll see it cracked one password so far, password Ubuntu, which is just no password at all. And you might want to add the format in it if it complains about that. So using that method, you'll see now we have the users along with their passwords. So John the Ripper is a tool you can use to crack passwords. You'll see that if we try to run it again, it will tell you no passwords left to crack. So if you get that bug, you can remove the files in the .john directory. So .john is a hidden directory. I show you the hidden files. You'll see there's a .john file. So delete those files. And then you can run it again. And you'll see it will try to crack the passwords again of that file. Of course, that would repeat, so it again creates those .john files. So whenever you encounter that error, no password hashes left to crack, what you want to do is delete the files in the .john directory, or delete the .john directory completely. Then you're able to run it again. If you're not getting any output, try to add this format to it. So --format sh512 crypt. So this is one of the hashing algorithms. You'll see that hashing can occur with many different algorithms. So let me show you. So a hash is created from a password. You'll see, and the hash is always the same for the same password. So if I have exactly the same input, it always is exactly the same output, right? That makes sense because that's how the passwords are stored. So they're stored in a hashed format, so in this kind of cryptic format, which depends on the hashing algorithm and also on the input. So another input, even if it's just a tiny change, so let's say A and then B, you'll see a completely different output. That's a property of hashing algorithms as well. And of course, with something like this, it is very hard to derive that the password is AB. So you need to use a password cracker like John the Ripper for that. Now this is just one of the many hashing algorithms. Now here we have some others like MD5, SHA1, SHA256. So you'll see that these hashes are much shorter, and depending on the algorithm the length is different. So there are many different hashing algorithms that are used behind the scenes to store the password in the shadow file. So in this case, on Linux, Ubuntu Linux, it's using this hashing algorithm. This is why we specified it. You'll see those hashes are quite long here, the password hashes for users, which is like a property of this hashing algorithm. Now, depending on older Linux systems, you might have another hashing algorithm here. But on modern systems, it will probably use this hashing algorithm. So specify that as a flag, because John the Ripper doesn't automatically detect hashing algorithms. It tries to, but it doesn't really do that well. So if you specify this line, it will crack the password hashes on Linux. And to get that password.txt file, you can use the unshadow command. So it's this command that will create the combined file. So password.txt is a combined file of etc password and etc shadow. And then use this command to crack them, and it will just show you the usernames and passwords in the file. Now it's important that you have the passwords word list in your home directory. So we copied that in the beginning, rocku.txtgz from user share word lists, and we right click and extracted it. So that should crack the passwords. Now if you get this error, no password hashes left to crack, just run this command to delete those files.